The Nevada high desert air at Naval Air Station Fallon carried the scent of sage and aviation fuel, a combination that had defined this remote training facility for generations. It was 1,400 hours on a Tuesday afternoon, and the sky above the vast bombing ranges was a flawless sheet of cobalt blue stretched tight against the horizon. Master Chief Petty Officer Marcus "Doc" Holloway stood in the shade of Hangar 3, watching a pair of F/A-18 Super Hornets scream overhead in perfect formation. The sound was a physical thing, a bone-rattling roar that made conversation impossible for the 5 seconds it took them to pass. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. He was used to it. After 22 years as a Navy SEAL, 12 of them with Naval Special Warfare Development Group, the sound of fast movers was as familiar as his own heartbeat. At his side, perfectly still despite the noise, sat Thor. Thor was a 4-year-old Belgian Malinois, 75 pounds of coiled muscle and focused intelligence wrapped in a coat of deep mahogany and black. His ears, naturally erect and mobile as radar dishes, tracked the jets even after they disappeared over the eastern range. Thor was not Marcus's first K-9 partner, he was his fourth. The others had all retired honorably, living out their days in the comfort they'd earned. Thor was different. He was sharper, faster, and possessed an almost eerie situational awareness that sometimes unnerved even Marcus. They were stationed here temporarily, part of a joint training evolution between SEAL team units and the Navy's elite Top Gun school. Marcus's official role was Senior Tactical Advisor, but his real job, the one he preferred, was simpler. He and Thor provided advanced K-9 capabilities, demonstrations, and realistic threat scenarios for the aviators. It was a cool-down assignment after a particularly brutal deployment to West Africa, and Marcus had accepted it gratefully. He needed the quiet. He needed the routine. He needed to not see another firefight for a while. His satellite phone buzzed against his hip. He pulled it out, recognizing the number. "Base Ops." "Holloway," he answered, his voice a deep, weathered baritone. "Master Chief, this is Commander Reese at Base Operations. We have a situation. We need you and your asset at Grid November 7. Immediately." Marcus's body shifted instantly from relaxed observer to operator. "What's the situation, Commander?" "We have a downed aircraft. T-45 Goshawk trainer went down hard about 10 minutes ago on the northwest perimeter near the old munitions bunkers. Pilot ejected, but we haven't established comms. Crash and rescue is en route, but the area is designated Code Red unexploded ordnance from the old test ranges. We need Thor to sweep the approach paths before we can get heavy equipment in there." "Understood." "We're moving." Marcus was already walking toward the base motor pool, Thor trotting at perfect heel position beside him. "What's the pilot's status?" There was a pause, heavy and ominous. "Unknown. His beacon is active, but he's not responding to radio. We need to get to him fast." "Copy that." ETA 10 minutes. Marcus grabbed the keys to a tactical response vehicle, a heavy-duty pickup equipped with emergency gear, and loaded Thor into the back seat. The dog settled immediately, his amber eyes focused forward, sensing the shift in his handler's demeanor. This was no longer training. This was the real work. The drive to the northwest perimeter took 8 minutes at speeds that pushed the truck's suspension to its limits. Marcus could see the smoke before he saw the crash site, a thick black column rising into the perfect blue sky like a funeral pyre. As he got closer, the scene resolved into brutal clarity. The T-45 had come down in a shallow basin surrounded by low scrub-covered hills and the crumbling concrete remains of 1952-era munitions bunkers. The impact crater was a twisted sculpture of torn metal, scorched earth, and aviation fuel burning with an intense, oily heat. The tail section had separated and lay 100 yards away, half buried in the sand. Crash and rescue vehicles were already on scene, their crews maintaining a perimeter, but no one was advancing toward the wreckage. Marcus pulled up to the command vehicle, a mobile operations center bristling with antennas. Commander Reese, a lean man in his 50s with the weathered face of a career aviator, was coordinating the response. He looked up as Marcus approached, relief evident in his eyes. "Master Chief, thank God. We can't get close. The ordnance sensors are lighting up like a Christmas tree. We need a clear path to the pilot's last known position." He pointed to a digital map on a tablet. "His beacon puts him about 300 yards northeast of the main impact, past those bunkers." Marcus studied the map, his mind automatically calculating routes, threat zones, and contingencies. What ordnance are we talking about? Old practice bombs, some live anti-personnel mines, from a Vietnam-era training scenario that was never fully cleared. This whole area was supposed to be off-limits, but the pilot had no choice when his hydraulics failed. "Understood." Marcus turned to Thor, who was already out of the truck, his body tense and ready. He knelt in front of the dog, making direct eye contact. "Thor, seek explosives. Slow and careful, boy." Thor's tail gave a single controlled wag. He understood. Marcus clipped a long tactical lead to Thor's harness and moved forward, his own trained eyes scanning the ground. The heat from the burning wreckage was intense, the air shimmering and distorted. Thor moved ahead, his nose working in the rapid, methodical pattern of a trained explosives detection dog. His entire body was a sensor, every muscle communicating information back to Marcus. They moved through the debris field, Thor alerting twice on half-buried ordnance, which Marcus marked with bright orange flags for the EOD team that would follow. The closer they got to the bunkers, the more uneasy Marcus felt. Something was wrong. The wreckage pattern didn't make sense. The main impact was behind them, but the pilot's beacon was ahead, past structures that should have been obstacles, not landing zones. They reached the bunkers, crumbling concrete structures half swallowed by decades of desert sand. Thor's behavior changed. He stopped his ordnance sweep, and his head snapped to the left, toward one of the larger bunkers. His ears went flat. A low growl rumbled deep in his chest. "What is it, boy?" Marcus whispered, his hand instinctively moving to the sidearm at his hip. "Not ordnance?" Thor didn't alert on explosives. He alerted on wrongness. He took 3 stiff-legged steps toward the bunker entrance, his growl intensifying. Then he did something Marcus had only seen twice in their partnership. He began to dig, frantically. His powerful front legs tore at the sand, piled against the bunker's collapsed entrance, sending up plumes of dust. "Thor, easy," Marcus commanded, moving to the dog's side. "What do you have?" Thor ignored the command. His digging intensified, becoming almost violent. He was tunneling into the sand drift, his entire front half disappearing into the hole he was creating. And then Marcus heard it. A sound so faint he thought he'd imagined it. A muffled thump, rhythmic, deliberate. Someone was knocking. From inside the bunker, Marcus's blood went cold. He keyed his radio. "Base Ops, this is Holloway. I have a priority situation. I need EOD and medical to my position now. I have a possible survivor buried in bunker structure, November 7 Charlie. Repeat, possible survivor buried alive." "Say again, Master Chief." "The pilot's beacon is—" "I don't care where the beacon is." Marcus cut him off, his voice hard. "I have a survivor here. Get me support now." He didn't wait for confirmation. He dropped to his knees beside Thor and began digging with his hands. The sand was loose, giving way easily, but beneath it was heavier debris chunks of concrete, twisted rebar, and beneath that, the faint outline of a steel access hatch. The knocking was louder now, more desperate. Thor had found someone, and they were running out of air. "Hold on," Marcus shouted toward the hatch. "We're getting you out." He worked with Thor, the two of them a team of focused, desperate energy. His hands were bleeding from the sharp edges of the concrete, but he didn't notice. All his focus was on that hatch, on the person trapped beneath tons of collapsed structure and sand. Behind him, he could hear the roar of approaching vehicles, voices shouting, but it was all background noise. His world had narrowed to this single mission: get them out. The EOD team arrived with heavy pry bars and cutting tools. They worked in coordinated silence, their training overriding the chaos. It took 15 minutes an eternity to clear enough debris to expose the hatch. It was old, rusted, and jammed shut from the rand. Collapse. One of the EOD techs attached a hydraulic spreader to the edge and began to pump. The metal groaned, the hatch buckled, and then, with a sharp metallic shriek, it gave way. Marcus was the first one in, dropping through the opening into the darkness below. His flashlight cut through the dust-filled air, illuminating a small underground chamber, maybe 10 feet square. It was an old ammunition storage room, its walls lined with empty metal shelving, and huddled in the far corner, covered in dust and blood, was a figure in a torn flight suit. But it wasn't the pilot. It was a young man, maybe late 20s, wearing the coveralls of a maintenance officer. His face was pale, streaked with blood from a deep gash on his forehead. His right leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. But his eyes, when they met Marcus's, were sharp, filled with a desperate, urgent intelligence. "They tried to kill me," the man gasped, his voice raw and cracked from dehydration and dust. "The crash, it wasn't an accident. Lieutenant Hayes, they made it look like pilot error. I saw them. I saw what they did to his aircraft. They knew I knew, so they—" He broke off, coughing violently. Marcus knelt beside him, his mind racing. "Easy. Save your strength. Medical is coming. Who tried to kill you?" The man grabbed Marcus's vest with surprising strength, pulling him close. His eyes were wild, fevered. "Captain Voss, maintenance chief. He's been signing off on bad parts for 2 years. Ghost maintenance. He's been pocketing hundreds of thousands." Hayes found the records. He was going to report it. So, Voss sabotaged his bird. And when I tried to stop him, he— Another coughing fit racked his body. "He what?" Marcus pressed, his voice calm but urgent. "He locked me in here. Collapsed the entrance. Told everyone I'd gone AWOL. Left me to die. But the crash had happened right over me. Hayes must have tried to eject toward the base. He saved himself. But I'm the witness. I saw everything. You have to— I've got you," Marcus said, his voice firm and full of absolute conviction. "You're safe now. No one is going to hurt you." Above them, the medics were lowering a basket stretcher. Marcus helped secure the injured man, his mind already working through the implications of what he'd just heard. A senior officer. Corruption. Sabotage. Murder. And this man, Petty Officer Marcus checked his name, Tape Torres, was the only witness. As they lifted Torres out of the bunker, Marcus climbed out behind him. The scene above ground had changed. The medical team was swarming Torres, but Marcus's attention was on the man standing at the edge of the perimeter. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s, wearing the khaki uniform of a Navy captain, his arms crossed, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. The name tape on his chest read, Voss. Their eyes met across the distance, and in that instant, Marcus knew. Torres had been telling the truth. He could see it in the man's body language, in the way Voss's jaw clenched, in the cold calculation in his eyes as he assessed this new, catastrophic development. A witness who should have been dead was now alive, and the man who'd found him was a Navy SEAL Master Chief with a dog that had just torn apart his perfect cover-up. Captain Voss turned and walked away, pulling out his phone. Thor, standing beside Marcus, let out a low, dangerous growl, his amber eyes locked on the retreating figure. "Yeah, boy," Marcus said quietly, his hand resting on the dog's head. "I see him too." The game had changed. This was no longer a simple rescue. This was a fight for survival, and the enemy was wearing the same uniform. The medical tent had been set up a quarter-mile from the crash site. A temporary trauma center staffed by Navy corpsmen and 2 flight surgeons who'd been scrambled from the hospital. Marcus stood outside the tent, Thor at his side, watching the controlled chaos through the open flap. Petty Officer. Second Class Daniel Torres was on a gurney, conscious but heavily medicated, surrounded by medical personnel working to stabilize him. Marcus had given his initial report to Commander Reese, keeping it factual and clinical. Thor had alerted to the bunker. They'd found Torres buried alive. Torres had claimed the crash was sabotage. Reese had gone pale, made 3 rapid phone calls, and told Marcus in no uncertain terms that he was to remain on site and speak to no one until NCIS arrived. That had been 40 minutes ago. Marcus used the time to think. Torres's story had the ring of truth. Desperation couldn't fake that level of detail. But making an accusation of sabotage and attempted murder against a senior officer was not something that would be taken lightly. There would be an investigation, but investigations took time. And if Torres was right, if Captain Voss had already tried to kill him once, he wouldn't hesitate to try again. Thor suddenly stiffened, his head turning toward the approach road. Marcus followed his gaze and saw two black SUVs raising dust clouds as they sped toward the site. NCIS had arrived. The vehicles pulled up hard, and 4 agents emerged. The lead agent was a woman in her early 40s, lean and intense, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a tactical vest over her dark suit and moved with the efficient precision of someone who'd spent time in the field. She walked directly to Marcus, her ID already out. "Master Chief Holloway? I'm Special Agent Rebecca Ortiz, NCIS. I need to hear exactly what you found in that bunker." Marcus ran through it again, word for word. Ortiz listened without interrupting, her sharp eyes never leaving his face. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "Torres is claiming Captain Lawrence Voss sabotaged Lieutenant Hayes's aircraft and attempted to murder him. That's a serious accusation." "Yes, ma'am, but you don't have proof. Just the word of an injured man who could be delirious from shock and dehydration." "That's correct," Marcus said. But Thor alerted, "My dog doesn't dig like that unless something is critically wrong." He found Torres when no one else even knew to look. Ortiz studied Thor, who met her gaze with calm intelligence. "I've read about canine capabilities, but a dog's intuition isn't evidence." "No, ma'am, but it's a starting point." A commotion erupted near the medical tent. Captain Voss had arrived, pushing past the perimeter guards. He strode directly toward the tent, his face set in an expression of paternal concern. "I heard one of my men was found. I need to see him." One of Ortiz's agents intercepted him. "Sir, this is an active investigation scene. You need to—" "I'm the maintenance chief of this entire air station, Agent. Torres works for me. I have a right to check on his welfare." Ortiz stepped forward, positioning herself between Voss and the tent. "Captain, I'm Special Agent Ortiz. I'm going to need you to step back." Voss's expression hardened. "On whose authority?" "On mine. This is now a federal investigation into possible aircraft sabotage. Until we determine what happened, no one enters that tent except medical personnel." "This is absurd," Voss said, his voice rising. "You're going to take the word of a traumatized sailor over what, Captain?" Ortiz's voice was cold and level. "I haven't accused you of anything yet." The two stared at each other, the tension crackling like electricity. Thor, sensing the threat, rose to his feet, his body tensed, a low rumble starting in his chest. Marcus put a hand on the dog's head, a silent command to hold position, but he let Thor's body language speak. The message was clear. Threat detected. Voss's eyes flicked to the dog, then back to Ortiz. "I'll be filing a formal complaint about this harassment, but I'll comply. For now." He turned and walked away, but not before shooting one last look toward the medical tent and the man inside who could destroy him. As soon as Voss was out of earshot, Ortiz turned to Marcus. "Your dog doesn't like him." "Thor has good instincts, ma'am." "So do I." She pulled out her phone, speaking rapidly to someone on the other end. When she hung up, she looked at Marcus with new resolve. "I'm putting a guard on Torres. And I'm going to need your help, Master Chief. Whatever you need. I need you and Thor to sweep Captain Voss's office and personal workspace. If there's any physical evidence of tampered parts, falsified maintenance records, anything Thor might pick up on it. Scent markers, hidden compartments, things our human investigators might miss." Marcus nodded. "When?" "Now. Before Voss has a chance to sanitize anything." She glanced at her watch. "He's here. His office is empty. We have a warrant being expedited. By the time we get there, it'll be legal. Then let's move." They took one of the NCIS SUVs, racing across the base toward the maintenance complex. Ortiz explained as they drove. "We pulled Torres's file. He's clean exemplary record, actually. Recently completed an advanced training course in aerospace maintenance fraud detection. He was being groomed for quality assurance. That's probably how he stumbled onto Voss's operation. And Lieutenant Hayes? Hayes was a whistleblower type, straight arrow. He'd filed 3 separate reports in the past month about maintenance irregularities. Nothing specific, just concerns. Each one was kicked back by, let me guess, Captain Voss. Exactly. Hayes's aircraft suffered complete hydraulic failure. It shouldn't have been in the air in the first place. Preliminary analysis from the crash site suggests the hydraulic lines were old, brittle, should have been replaced months ago. But the maintenance logs show they were replaced last week with certified parts. Ghost maintenance, Marcus said. Voss signs off on work that was never done, pockets the money meant for the parts, and hopes no one dies before the aircraft cycles out. That's the theory. But Hayes did die, or came damn close. He's still in critical condition at the hospital, and if Torres dies too, Voss walks away clean. It becomes an unfortunate accident, blamed on pilot error or manufacturing defect. He's not going to die, Marcus said, his voice flat and certain. Not while I'm breathing. They arrived at the maintenance complex, a sprawling collection of warehouses and offices that smelled of hydraulic fluid, metal shavings, and industrial solvents. Ortiz's phone buzzed the warrant had been approved. They moved quickly to Voss's office, a corner room on the 2nd floor with windows overlooking the flight line. Ortiz's team began the methodical process of searching. They photographed everything, cataloged files, imaged his computer. Marcus and Thor operated independently, working through the space with a different focus. Thor wasn't looking for documents. He was looking for anomalies. The dog moved through the office in his characteristic pattern, nose working, body language fluid. He passed the desk without interest. He passed the filing cabinets. But when he reached the far wall, where a large metal supply locker stood, he stopped. His posture changed. His ears flattened. He sat his trained alert position for concealed materials. Agent Ortiz, Marcus called quietly. Thor has something. Ortiz and her team approached. The locker looked standard issue, military green, secured with a simple combination lock. One of the agents worked the lock. It opened easily, not secured. Inside were cleaning supplies, spare uniforms, the normal detritus of a military office. But Thor was staring at the bottom of the locker, his focus absolute. Marcus knelt, running his hands along the metal floor. It felt solid, but when he knocked on it, the sound was wrong hollow. False bottom. The agents quickly removed the supplies. The bottom panel had nearly invisible finger pulls at the corners. They lifted it away. Underneath was a shallow compartment, and inside that compartment was everything they needed. Stacks of maintenance forms, pre-signed but blank. Purchase orders for aircraft parts with inflated prices. And most damning, a ledger, handwritten, documenting 2 years of fraudulent maintenance sign-offs. Aircraft tail numbers, parts that were never replaced, prices that were never paid. It was a complete confession, hidden but not destroyed. Voss had kept records, probably for insurance or blackmail. "Got him," Ortiz breathed, her voice barely a whisper. "We've got him cold." One of the agent's radios crackled. "Ma'am, we have a situation at the hospital." Captain Voss just tried to enter Lieutenant Hayes's ICU room. Security stopped him, but he's demanding access as the maintenance chief responsible for the investigation. Ortiz's face went hard. He's trying to finish the job. He's trying to get to Hayes before he wakes up. She turned to Marcus. "I need to get to that hospital. Can you stay with Torres? He's still at the medical tent." "I don't have enough agents to cover both." "I'm on it," Marcus said. "Torres doesn't move without me and Thor clearing it first." They raced back to the crash site. The sun was setting now, painting the desert in shades of blood orange and purple. The scene had quieted, most of the emergency personnel having rotated out. The medical tent was still lit, a glowing beacon in the gathering darkness, guarded by 2 base security officers who looked young and nervous. Marcus approached, Thor at his side. "Master Chief Holloway. NCIS assigned me to provide additional security for the patient." The guards checked his ID, relieved to have someone senior taking responsibility. "Yes, Master Chief." He's stable. Doctor says they're waiting for a medevac to Reno for surgery on his leg. When's the bird arriving? Should be here in 30 minutes. Marcus entered the tent. Torres was awake, his eyes tracking movement, his face pale but determined. When he saw Marcus and Thor, something like relief washed over his features. "You came back?" Torres said, his voice hoarse. "Said I would," Marcus replied, positioning himself where he had a clear view of both entrances. Thor settled at his feet, facing the main entrance. "NCIS is building a case. You were right about everything. They found Voss's records." Torres closed his eyes, a single tear tracking down his dusty cheek. "Hayes? Is he? He's alive? Critical, but alive. They've got protection on him now, too." "Voss will try something," Torres said, his voice urgent despite his exhaustion. "He has connections. Money. He's not the type to go quietly." "Neither am I," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of 2 decades of combat operations. "And neither is Thor." As if sensing the conversation was about him, Thor's head lifted, his ears swiveled forward, his body going rigid. He was staring at the tent's rear entrance, a flap that led to the supply area. A low growl built in his chest. Marcus's hand moved to his sidearm. "Someone's here." The rear flap moved, just slightly, as if tested by a cautious hand. Then it flew open. But instead of an attack, a figure stumbled in one of the young security guards from outside, his face bloody, his eyes glassy. He collapsed to his knees. "Ambush," he gasped. 3 men. They took out the other guard. "They're coming." He didn't finish. The main entrance exploded inward as 3 large men in civilian clothes rushed in, weapons drawn. They weren't military. They were contractors, hired muscle. The lead man, a brute with a shaved head and cold eyes, pointed his pistol at Torres. "The maintenance officer comes with us." Marcus didn't hesitate. His training took over. He moved faster than men his age should be able to move, his body a weapon system honed by years of combat. His sidearm cleared its holster in a fluid motion, and he put 2 rounds into the first man's center mass before the attacker could pivot. Thor launched simultaneously, a 75-pound missile of fury. He hit the second man high, his jaws clamping onto the gun arm. The man screamed, his weapon firing harmlessly into the tent's canvas ceiling as he went down under the dog's assault. The third man tried to bring his weapon to bear on Marcus, but Marcus was already inside his range, slamming the pistol aside with one hand while delivering a brutal elbow strike to the man's temple. The attacker crumpled. The entire engagement lasted 4 seconds. Marcus kicked the weapons away from the downed men, his own pistol covering them. Thor stood over the second attacker, his teeth still buried in the man's arm, a steady, menacing growl vibrating through the tent. "Thor, release. Guard." The dog immediately let go, but positioned himself between the attackers and Torres, his message clear. "Try again, and you won't survive." Marcus keyed his radio. "This is Master Chief Holloway at the medical tent. We have 3 hostile actors down. I need NCIS, base security, and that medevac bird here now. We are under active threat." The response was instantaneous. Sirens wailed across the base. Within minutes, the tent was surrounded by armed security personnel and NCIS agents. Ortiz arrived, taking in the scene with professional assessment. "You okay, Master Chief?" "We're fine. They're not." Marcus nodded to the 3 attackers, now being secured by agents. They were here for Torres. Ortiz knelt by the lead attacker, checking his wallet. She pulled out a business card. "Iron Hawk Security Solutions. That's a private military contractor outfit. Expensive. Someone paid a lot of money to send these men." She stood, her expression grim. "Voss is desperate. He's making mistakes." "Good," Marcus said. "Desperate men make bad choices. We can use that." The medevac helicopter arrived 10 minutes later, a Navy MH-60 with full medical capabilities. Marcus personally supervised Torres's transfer, Thor clearing the bird before they loaded the stretcher. As the helicopter lifted off into the night sky, its navigation lights blinking red and green against the stars, Marcus felt a knot of tension loosen slightly in his chest. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more incredible true stories of courage and loyalty. Torres was out of immediate danger, but the job wasn't finished. Ortiz approached, her phone pressed to her ear, her expression dark. She ended the call and looked at Marcus. "We just got word. Captain Voss didn't report for mandatory questioning. His vehicle is gone from the base. He's running. Where would he go? He's smart. He'll try to get out of the country. We've alerted Border Patrol, TSA, Coast Guard, but he's got resources. If he makes it across the border into Mexico, we might lose him." Marcus thought for a moment, then looked down at Thor. The dog was tired, his earlier adrenaline fading, but when Marcus met his eyes, he saw the same determined intelligence that had saved Torres's life. "Thor found one man buried under tons of sand and concrete. You think he can find one man? Hiding in the desert?" Ortiz stared at him. "You want to track him? He's got, 3 hours head start? He doesn't know this terrain like I do. And he definitely doesn't have a partner like Thor." Marcus pulled out a map on his phone, studying the terrain south of the base. If he's running to Mexico, he's got two options: take the interstate and risk checkpoints, or go off-road through the desert. A man like Voss, facing prison, he'll choose the desert. He'll think he can disappear. That's a lot of ground to cover. Not if you know where to look. Marcus pointed to the map. There's an old mining road that runs south through the mountains. It's Bureau of Land Management, land no patrols, no cameras. It connects to a network of trails that cross into Mexico near a small town called San Felipe. If I were running, that's the route I'd take. Ortiz made a decision. "Okay, I'm coming with you. We'll take 2 vehicles, your truck, and one of our SUVs. But Master Chief, if we find him, we do this by the book. He comes back alive to face trial." "Agreed," Marcus said, but his eyes were cold. "As long as he gives us the chance." The desert at night was a different world. The temperature dropped 30 degrees, the sand radiating away the day's heat into a sky so clear and vast it seemed infinite. Marcus drove with his headlights off, navigating by moonlight and GPS, his night vision equipment resting on the seat beside him. Thor sat in the passenger seat, his head out the window, his nose working the night air. Ortiz followed in her SUV, 2 agents with her, maintaining radio silence to avoid detection. They'd driven for an hour, following the old mining road as it climbed into the low mountains that marked the border between Nevada and Mexico. The road was barely more than a trail now, washed out in places, choked with sage and creosote bushes. Marcus stopped at a junction where the road split. He stepped out, kneeling in the dust, examining the ground, with his flashlight held at a low angle. Fresh tire tracks, deep treads. A heavy vehicle had passed through here within the last few hours, heading south. He called Ortiz over. "He came this way." "How can you be sure it's him?" Marcus pointed to a spot where the vehicle had stopped, probably to check a map or GPS. "Boot prints? Military issue." And something else, a small shred of paper, partially buried in the sand. Marcus picked it up carefully. It was a corner of a maintenance form, torn and discarded. The header was visible. Naval Air Station Fallon. "It's him," Marcus said. "And he's panicking. He's leaving a trail." They continued south, moving slower now, more cautiously. The road deteriorated into little more than a hiking trail. After another 30 minutes, Marcus's headset crackled. One of Ortiz's agents, scanning ahead with thermal imaging. "I've got a heat signature. Vehicle, stationary, approximately 2 clicks ahead in a ravine." "That's our target," Ortiz said. "Approach with extreme caution. He's likely armed." They left the vehicles a quarter-mile back and moved in on foot. Marcus took point. Thor at his side, moving through the darkness with the silent efficiency of a lifetime of night operations. They approached the ravine from above, using the high ground for tactical advantage. Below them, illuminated by faint starlight, was a dark SUV wedged between 2 large boulders. The front end was crumpled. Voss had misjudged the terrain and crashed. The driver's door was open, but the vehicle was empty. Marcus scanned the area with his night vision. He picked up a heat signature, moving away from the vehicle, heading deeper into the ravine. A figure, stumbling, favoring one leg. Voss was injured and on foot. "I've got him," Marcus whispered into his radio. 300 meters south, moving slow. "He's hurt." "We'll flank around," Ortiz responded. "Push him toward us. But Master Chief, no heroics. We need him alive." "Copy that." Marcus and Thor descended into the ravine, moving like shadows. The terrain was treacherous, loose rock and hidden drops, but they navigated it with practiced ease. Thor was focused now, his body low, his movements silent. He'd scented their quarry. Ahead, Marcus could hear the sound of someone moving clumsily through the brush, the snap of branches, the rattle of dislodged stones, the harsh rasp of labored breathing. Voss was making enough noise for 3 men. Fear and injury had stripped away any tactical awareness he might have had. Marcus increased his pace, closing the distance. They rounded a bend in the ravine, and there he was, Captain Lawrence Voss, his uniform torn and dusty, his face streaked with blood from a gash on his forehead. He was limping badly, one hand pressed against his ribs, the other clutching a pistol. He must have heard them, because he spun around, the pistol coming up. His eyes were wild, desperate. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice cracking. "I'll shoot, I swear. To God, I'll." He stopped. His eyes had found Thor. The dog had moved ahead of Marcus, placing himself between the threat and his handler. Thor's body was coiled, ready to spring. His lips were pulled back, revealing teeth that gleamed in the moonlight. The low growl that emanated from him was a sound of promised violence. "Call off your dog," Voss said, his voice shaking. The pistol wavered in his grip. "Call him off right now, or I'll—" "You'll what?" Marcus's voice cut through the darkness, calm and cold. "Shoot him? You've got one chance to hit a target moving at 30 miles an hour in the dark before he tears your throat out. Is that really the bet you want to make, Captain?" Voss swung the pistol toward Marcus instead. "This is your fault. None of this would have happened if you hadn't found Torres. He should have died in that bunker." "But he didn't," Marcus said, taking a step forward. Thor matched the movement, still maintaining his position. "Because Thor found him." "And? Now we've found you. It's over." "No." Voss's voice was rising, taking on a hysterical edge. "No, I'm not going to prison. I did everything for this Navy. 30 years of service. And for what? A pension that barely covers rent? I earned that money. Those ghost maintenance funds were mine." "You killed people," Marcus said, his voice hard as granite. "Lieutenant Hayes almost died because of your greed. Torres almost died. How many other pilots did you put in the air with compromised aircraft? How many times did you bet their lives against your bank account?" "They were acceptable risks," Voss shouted. "The failure rate was well within—" "You sabotaged Hayes's bird specifically." Marcus cut him off. "Torres said so. Hayes was going to expose you, so you tried to kill him. That's not an acceptable risk. That's murder." Voss's face twisted. Hayes was a self-righteous little punk who didn't understand how the real Navy works. And Torres, that boy, couldn't keep his mouth shut. Always. Asking questions, always poking around. They brought this on themselves. So you hired contractors to finish the job. Marcus took another step forward. Thor moved with him. They were now only 20 feet from Voss, close enough to see the sweat gleaming on his face, close enough to see his finger tightening on the trigger. "Those men you sent to the medical tent? NCIS has them in custody. They're talking, giving up everything. You're done, Captain." "I'm not done." Voss's voice cracked. "I'm not spending the rest of my life in Leavenworth. I'd rather—" He made his choice. The pistol swung toward Marcus. Time slowed. Marcus saw the barrel line up, saw Voss's finger squeeze. He was already moving, dropping into a tactical roll, his own weapon coming up. But Thor was faster. The dog launched, covering the distance in a single explosive bound. He hit Voss low, his jaws clamping onto the gun arm with crushing force. The pistol discharged, the muzzle flash bright in the darkness, the shot going wild. Voss screamed, a high, terrified sound as he went down under the dog's weight. Thor didn't release. He held the arm, applying steady, controlled pressure, exactly as he'd been trained. Not to kill, but to control. Voss writhed beneath him, trying to buck the dog off, but 75 pounds of determined Malinois was immovable. Marcus was on them in seconds. He kicked the fallen pistol away and secured Voss's free arm, zip-tying his wrists behind his back with practiced efficiency. Thor, release. Good boy. Off. Thor immediately let go and stepped back, his job done. He sat, panting, watching as Marcus hauled Voss to his feet. Ortiz and her agents emerged from the darkness, weapons drawn, moving in to secure the scene. She looked at Voss, then at Marcus, then at Thor, who was calmly accepting praise from one of the agents. "Cleanest takedown I've seen in years," she said. "Your dog is something else, Master Chief." "He's the best partner I've ever had," Marcus said, reaching down to scratch Thor behind the ears. The dog leaned into the touch, his tail wagging once. Voss was read his rights. His injuries assessed a broken rib, a badly sprained ankle, and a deeply bruised ego. He said nothing, his face a mask of defeat. As they led him back toward the vehicles, he looked at Marcus one last time. "You should have let me go," he said bitterly. "I would have disappeared. No trial, no scandal for the Navy." "The Navy doesn't need you to protect its reputation," Marcus replied. "It needs men like Torres and Hayes. Men who do the job right, even when it's hard, even when it costs them." He paused. "You betrayed every principle you swore to uphold. Thor has more honor in one paw than you had in your entire career." Voss looked away, unable to meet Marcus's eyes. The sun was rising over Naval Air Station Fallon, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber when Marcus finally returned. He'd been awake for 36 hours, running on adrenaline and coffee, but he felt a deep, bone-deep satisfaction. Torres was safe, recovering in a hospital in Reno. Hayes had been upgraded to stable condition, and Captain Lawrence Voss was in a holding cell, awaiting transfer to federal custody. Marcus drove to the K-9 training facility, a quiet corner of the base surrounded by chain-link fence and shade trees. Thor had earned rest, and Marcus was going to make sure he got it. He unloaded the dog from the truck, and Thor immediately found a sunny patch of grass, circling twice before collapsing into it with a satisfied groan. Marcus sat beside him, his back against a tree, and allowed himself to close his eyes for just a moment. "Master Chief Holloway?" He opened his eyes to find Commander Reese standing nearby. Accompanied by a Navy captain, Marcus didn't recognize an older man with the weathered bearing of a career aviator and the silver wings of a naval flight officer. Marcus started to stand, but the captain waved him down. "At ease, Master." "Chief, I'm Captain Hendricks, Commander Air Wing 12. I wanted to thank you personally." He knelt beside Thor, who opened one eye to assess the new human before deciding he was acceptable and going back to sleep. "This dog saved lives. Petty Officer Torres, Lieutenant Hayes, and if what Agent Ortiz tells me is true, potentially dozens of pilots who would have flown aircraft with compromised maintenance." Thor did his job. "Sir," Marcus said, "I just followed his lead." "That's not the report I read," Hendricks said with a slight smile. "Agent Ortiz was quite clear you acted on instinct when others would have followed protocol to the wrong conclusion. You trusted your partner over the official narrative. That takes courage." "Or stubbornness, sir," Hendricks laughed. "Same thing, in my experience." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "I'm recommending you and Thor for the Navy and Marine Corps Medal for heroism. Torres is also submitting a statement supporting that recommendation. Additionally, NCIS is requesting that you be temporarily assigned to assist in the broader investigation into maintenance fraud across multiple commands." Voss wasn't working alone. There's a network. Marcus looked down at Thor, who was now fully asleep, his paws twitching as he chased something in a dream. "Sir, with respect, I think Thor and I have earned a break. Maybe finish out our rotation here, doing what we came for, training scenarios, something boring." Hendricks nodded. "Understood. You've done more than enough." He stood, brushed grass from his uniform. "But when you're ready, there's important work waiting." the kind where a good dog and a better handler can make all the difference. After the officers left, Marcus sat in the sun with his partner, feeling the warmth soak into his tired bones. His phone buzzed a text from Ortiz. "Torres awake and asking about you and Thor. Says he owes you both his life." Doc says, "Full recovery expected." Marcus typed back, "Tell him we're even. He survived impossible odds. That takes its own kind of courage." Another buzz, this time from the hospital. Lieutenant Hayes awake and coherent. First words, "Did they get Voss?" "Thought you'd want to know." Marcus smiled. Hayes would fly again. Torres would return to duty. And somewhere, in federal lockup, Voss would face the consequences of his choices. Justice, imperfect but real. Thor woke up, yawning widely, and looked at Marcus with those intelligent amber eyes that held no judgment, no agenda, just absolute loyalty and trust. Marcus pulled a worn tennis ball from his bag and held it up. "One more round, boy? You earned it." Thor's tail began to wag, his entire body vibrating with joy. Marcus threw the ball, and the dog bounded after it, his earlier exhaustion forgotten, running through the golden morning light like he was young and whole and perfect. Because in Marcus's eyes, he was. 3 weeks later, a ceremony was held in front of Hangar 3. The entire air wing assembled, along with the base command staff, representatives from NCIS, and a small media contingent cleared by Navy Public Affairs. Master Chief Marcus Holloway stood at attention in his dress uniform, Thor sitting perfectly at his side, a polished leather collar around his neck. Captain Hendricks read the citation, "For heroic achievement in the face of immediate danger to life, demonstrating extraordinary courage, initiative, and dedication to duty." The words washed over Marcus, official and formal. But what mattered more were the two men standing in the front row. Petty Officer Daniel Torres, on crutches but standing tall, his uniform crisp, and beside him, Lieutenant Jacob Hayes, still thin and pale from his hospital stay, but alive, his flight wings gleaming on his chest. When the medal was pinned to Marcus's uniform, the assembly applauded. But when a special commendation was read for Thor, and a ceremonial challenge coin was placed on his collar by Commander Reese, the applause turned into a standing ovation. Thor, being Thor, took the attention with dignified calm, accepting head scratches from the Admiral with the same grace he'd shown when taking down armed attackers. After the ceremony, Torres approached, leaning on his crutches. "Master Chief, I never got to properly thank you." Marcus shook his head. "Thank Thor. He's the one who found you." Torres knelt, wincing slightly, and looked the dog in the eyes. "Thank you, boy. You saved my life." Thor, in response, licked Torres's face once, his tail wagging. Torres laughed, the sound bright and genuine, the laugh of a man given a second chance. Hayes stepped forward, offering his hand to Marcus. "They tell me you carried out the investigation that put Voss away. That takes guts, going after a senior officer." "I just followed the evidence," Marcus said, shaking the offered hand, "and trusted my partner's nose." "Still." Hayes glanced down at Thor. "That dog is a hero. You both are." As the crowd dispersed and the ceremony ended, Marcus walked Thor back to the training facility, away from the cameras and the attention. They found their spot under the tree, and Marcus produced a large, thick steak he'd been saving Thor's real reward, far better than any medal. As Thor worked on his feast, Marcus pulled out his phone and looked at a message he'd received that morning. It was from Agent Ortiz. "We brought down the entire maintenance fraud network. 7 bases, 22 officers, $3.4 million in recovered funds. All because one dog wouldn't stop digging. You and Thor changed everything." Marcus typed back, "We just did our job, but I'll pass on the compliment. He deserves it." He set the phone aside and watched his partner enjoy the simple pleasure of a good meal after hard work well done. The sun was warm, the air was clear, and for the first time in months, Marcus felt something close to peace. Thor finished his steak and came over, resting his big head on Marcus's knee, looking up with eyes that held wisdom, loyalty, and an unspoken bond forged in shared purpose. "Good boy," Marcus said softly, scratching behind his ears. Best partner I ever had. Thor's tail thumped against the ground, a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. And in that moment, in the quiet aftermath of chaos and danger, Master Chief Marcus Holloway understood a fundamental truth. The greatest weapon in his arsenal wasn't his training, his experience, or even his courage. It was trust. Trust in a partner who would never quit, never falter, and never leave him behind. And that trust had saved lives. The investigation that followed Voss's arrest rippled through the Navy like a depth charge, detonating beneath still water. What had begun as one corrupt maintenance chief's scheme unraveled into something far more insidious. A network of officers across 7 naval installations who had been falsifying records, selling certified parts on the black market, and signing off on maintenance that existed only on paper. Marcus had thought his part was finished. He'd been wrong. 6 weeks after the ceremony, he was sitting in a secure briefing room at Naval Criminal Investigative Service headquarters in San Diego. Agent Rebecca Ortiz stood at the head of a conference table covered in photographs, documents, and organizational charts that looked like spiderwebs of corruption. "We've arrested 22 officers so far," Ortiz said, her voice clinical but edged with exhaustion. "But there's a problem. The ringleader, the man who organized the entire operation, we can't touch him." Marcus leaned forward. "Why not?" Ortiz tapped a photograph pinned to the center of the web. It showed a distinguished-looking man in his early 60s wearing the uniform of a Navy Rear Admiral. Rear Admiral Gerald Crane. He retired 8 months ago with full honors, moved to a compound in Montana. By the time we connected him to the fraud network, he'd already liquidated his assets, established residency in a non-extradition-friendly jurisdiction through a shell company, and lawyered up with a defense team that makes the mafia's attorneys look like public defenders. "So, arrest him anyway," Marcus said. "You have evidence. We have circumstantial evidence. Voss refuses to testify against him, says Crane will have him killed in prison if he talks. The others in the network only dealt with intermediaries. Crane insulated himself perfectly. Every communication was verbal, every transaction laundered through so many shell companies that our forensic accountants need flowcharts to track the money." Another agent, a younger man named Chen, spoke up. "We need something concrete, a witness who dealt with Crane directly, or physical evidence that ties him to the conspiracy. Without that, his attorneys will tie us up in litigation for years. And meanwhile, he's sitting on approximately $8 million in stolen funds." Ortiz turned to Marcus. "Which brings us to why you're here, Master. Chief, we think there's evidence at Crane's Montana compound. Financial records, hard drives, documentation he kept as insurance. But we can't get a warrant. We don't have probable cause that would survive his legal team's challenges. What we need is leverage." Marcus studied the aerial photographs of Crane's property spread across the table. It was a fortress, 200 acres of forested land, surrounded by high fences, with a main house that looked more like a bunker than a residence. Security cameras everywhere, multiple outbuildings. "You want me to conduct illegal surveillance on a retired flag officer?" "No," Ortiz said carefully. "But Crane has a weakness. He's arrogant, believes he's untouchable. He's been giving interviews to sympathetic media outlets, playing the role of a wrongly accused Navy hero being persecuted by overzealous investigators. Next week, he's hosting a charity fundraiser at his compound, a veterans support event. It's open to credentialed military personnel and their families." She slid an invitation across the table. "You're a decorated Navy SEAL Master Chief with an award-winning K-9 partner. You've been personally invited to attend, demonstrate Thor's capabilities, and meet with potential donors. It's entirely legitimate." Marcus picked up the invitation, reading the embossed text. His jaw tightened. "You want me to go there, gain his trust, and look for evidence while I'm playing show and tell with my dog?" "I want you to do what you do best," Ortiz said, her voice steady. "Observe, assess, trust your instincts and Thor's nose. If there's something there, you'll find it. And if you do, we'll have the probable cause we need for a legal warrant. And if Crane figures out what I'm doing, Then, you're a decorated SEAL attending a charity event who happened to wander into the wrong part of a very large property. She paused. But Master Chief, I won't lie to you. This man is dangerous. He's brilliant, connected, and absolutely ruthless. Voss was terrified enough to try murder rather than betray him. If Crane suspects you're there for anything other than his dog and pony show, you'll be in enemy territory with no backup. Marcus looked down at Thor, who was lying beneath the conference table, chin on his paws, watching the humans with calm patience. The dog had earned his rest. They both had. This wasn't their fight anymore, except it was. Because somewhere in Crane's web of corruption, there were more pilots like Hayes, more dedicated sailors like Torres, more men and women whose lives were gambled away for profit margins and luxury vacation homes. "When's the event?" Marcus asked. 5 days. We'll be there. The compound was even more impressive and more intimidating in person. Marcus drove through the main gate in a rented SUV, Thor sitting calmly in the passenger seat, wearing his formal K9 vest with his commendations displayed. The driveway wound through dense pine forest for nearly a mile before, opening onto a manicured clearing dominated by Crane's residence. It was built like a hunting lodge designed by a paranoid billionaire, massive timber construction with stone accents, solar panels on the roof, and what Marcus's trained eye recognized as ballistic-rated windows. The vehicles parked in the circular drive were worth more than most people earned in a decade. Mercedes, Range Rovers, even a vintage military Humvee, painted in glossy black. Men in suits, private security, not the usual rent. Cops directed traffic and checked credentials with professional efficiency. Marcus handed over his invitation and military ID. One of the guards ran it through a handheld scanner, while another walked around the SUV with what looked like a radio but was actually a sophisticated detection device, checking for recording equipment or weapons. "Master Chief Holloway," the first guard said, his tone shifting to respect as he read Marcus's service record on his scanner. "Welcome, sir. Admiral Crane is looking forward to meeting you and your partner. If you'll proceed to the main house, there's a staging area for the K9 demonstration in the rear courtyard." Marcus drove forward, his eyes cataloging everything. Security cameras on every structure. Motion sensors in the trees. At least 8 guards visible, probably more concealed. The property had overlapping fields of fire that would make an assault nearly impossible. Crane hadn't just retired to the wilderness. He'd built himself a compound that could withstand a siege. Thor sensed Marcus's tension. The dog shifted in his seat, his amber eyes alert, scanning the environment with the same tactical awareness his handler possessed. "Easy, boy," Marcus murmured. "We're just here to put on a show." The rear courtyard was already populated with about 40 guests, veterans, in various states of dress, from full formal uniforms to casual civilian clothes. There was a stage set up with sound equipment, tables loaded with catered food, and an open bar that was doing brisk business. The atmosphere was convivial, almost aggressively normal, and standing at the center of it all, holding court like a king greeting his subjects, was Rear Admiral Gerald Crane. He was shorter than Marcus expected, maybe 5'9", but he carried himself with the rigid posture of a man who'd spent 40 years in uniform. His silver hair was cut in a precise fade, his polo shirt and slacks immaculate. His face was tanned and healthy, the face of a man enjoying a prosperous retirement. But his eyes, pale blue and cold, were the eyes of a predator assessing prey. Those eyes locked onto Marcus as he approached with Thor. "Master Chief Holloway?" Crane's voice was warm, his smile perfect. He extended his hand. "I'm so honored you could make it. I've read about your actions at Fallon, absolutely remarkable. And this must be Thor." Marcus shook the offered hand, noting the grip firm but not aggressive, practiced. "Admiral, thank you for the invitation." Crane knelt, and Marcus immediately tensed, his protective instinct flaring. But Crane simply held out his hand for Thor to sniff, showing proper respect for a working dog. Thor accepted the greeting with professional courtesy, but Marcus noticed his partner's tail didn't wag. The dog was reserving judgment. "Magnificent animal," Crane said, standing. "Belgian Malinois." correct? I had the pleasure of working with several K-9 units during my time in command. Incredible capabilities. The bond between handler and dog is something civilians never truly understand. No, sir, they don't. Marcus agreed, his voice neutral. Well, you'll have a chance to educate them. We've got a great crowd here today, veterans, donors, some media. Your demonstration is scheduled for 1,500 hours. Until then, please enjoy the hospitality. If you need anything for Thor water, shade, a place to rest, my staff will take care of it. Crane's smile never wavered, but Marcus saw something flicker in those cold eyes. Assessment, calculation. I understand you were instrumental in uncovering that unfortunate situation with Captain Voss. There it was, the real reason for the invitation. Thor uncovered it, sir. I just followed his lead. Still, quite the scandal. These investigations have become rather overzealous, in my opinion. One corrupt officer, and suddenly the entire maintenance community is under suspicion. It's damaging morale, don't you think? Marcus held Crane's gaze. I think corruption damages morale a lot more than investigations do, Admiral. The sailors I know want to serve with honor. Finding out their leaders betrayed that trust, that's what hurts. Crane's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Well said, Master Chief. Honor and integrity, that's what separates us from the enemy. He clapped Marcus on the shoulder. Enjoy the event. I look forward to your demonstration. He walked away, immediately engaging another group of guests, his charm offensive, continuing without missing a beat. Thor let out a soft huff, almost like a snort of disdain. Yeah, Marcus murmured. I didn't like him either, boy. The demonstration went perfectly. Marcus put Thor through his paces. Explosive detection, attack and release commands, search and rescue scenarios. The crowd was appropriately impressed. The media got their footage, and Crane beamed like a proud sponsor from the front row. But Marcus's real work began after the demonstration. During the social hour, when guests mingled and Crane's staff offered tours of the property. The Admiral is very proud of his self-sufficiency, one of the tour guides explained, a young woman with the practiced enthusiasm of someone who'd given this speech many times. The compound has its own water system, solar power, backup generators. There's a workshop, a garage with a full machine shop, and even a small data center where the Admiral manages his various charitable foundations. Data center. That's where the evidence would be. Marcus raised his hand. Could we see the data center? I'm interested in the technical setup, always thinking about off-grid solutions for my own retirement. The guide's smile faltered. Oh, I'm sorry. That area isn't part of the standard tour. Security protocols, you understand. The Admiral handles sensitive information for his various non-profit organizations. Of course, Marcus said easily. No problem. But Thor had been watching his handler, reading the subtle tension in his body language. And when they passed the building marked Utilities and Tech, set slightly apart from the main house, the dog's nose began working overtime. His ears swiveled forward, his tail went rigid. He sat. His trained alert. The guide noticed. Is your dog okay? He's fine, Marcus said quickly. Probably just picking up on something from the demonstration earlier. His adrenaline's still up. But Thor wouldn't move. He stared at the tech building with absolute focus, his body communicating a clear message. There's something here, something important. Marcus pretended to check his phone. Actually, I need to take a call work emergency. Would it be possible for Thor to have some water and a rest while I handle this? Absolutely. There's a shaded area with water stations just behind the main house. I'll show you. As they walked away, Marcus memorized every detail of the tech building's position, its access points, its security measures. Thor kept looking back over his shoulder at the structure, his alert never fully relaxing. That evening, as the guests began to depart and the sun set over the Montana mountains, Marcus made his decision. He couldn't leave without knowing what Thor had detected. If there was evidence in that building, evidence that could bring down Crane and his entire network, he had to try. He approached one of Crane's security team, a former Marine whose posture and bearing Marcus recognized. Hey, brother, any chance I could get a room for the night? It's a long drive back to the airport, and Thor's exhausted. I saw you have guest accommodations. The guard checked his tablet. Let me ask the Admiral. 5 minutes later, Marcus was being shown to a guest cabin on the property, comfortable, well-appointed, and undoubtedly monitored. He swept the room carefully, finding 3 cameras disguised as smoke detectors and what he suspected was audio surveillance in the ventilation system. Crane wasn't taking any chances. At 0200 hours, when the compound had settled into the quiet rhythms of night, Marcus made his move. He'd disabled the cameras in his cabin using a technique that would look like a power fluctuation plausible deniability if questioned. He dressed in dark clothing, left his phone behind, and moved out with Thor into the cold mountain night. The compound's security was good, but it was designed to keep people out, not in. Marcus knew how to move through sensor fields, how to use shadows, and timing to avoid camera coverage. And Thor moved like a ghost beside him, silent and invisible in the darkness. They reached the tech building. The door was locked with a sophisticated biometric scanner, but there was a ventilation intake large enough for Thor to squeeze through. Marcus removed the grate, gave Thor the hand signal for advance and hold, and watched his partner disappear into the ductwork. 2 minutes later, Thor's weight on an internal motion sensor triggered the building's climate control system. The door's emergency release activated exactly as Marcus had calculated. He slipped inside. The interior was exactly what Ortiz had described. A small but sophisticated server room with multiple hard drives, a wall of monitors showing security feeds, and filing cabinets that probably contained the paper trail Crane thought he'd hidden. Thor was waiting for him, sitting patiently beside one specific filing cabinet, his nose pointed directly at it. Marcus opened it. Inside were financial ledgers, handwritten notes in Crane's distinctive script, and most damning of all, a leather journal documenting every transaction, every bribe, every officer recruited into the network. It was Crane's insurance policy, his leverage to ensure his co-conspirators never turned on him. It was also his death warrant. Marcus photographed every page with a camera disguised as a pen, working with silent efficiency. Thor kept watch, his ears monitoring the building's entrance. They were almost finished when Thor's body language changed. His ears flattened, a low growl built in his chest. Someone was coming. Marcus closed the filing cabinet, pocketed the camera pen, and moved to the shadows. The door opened. Rear Admiral Gerald Crane entered, followed by 2 of his security guards. Crane hit the lights. "Hello, Master Chief," he said, his voice no longer warm. "I had hoped I was wrong about you." Marcus stepped into the light, Thor at his side. "Admiral, I assume you found what you were looking for?" Crane gestured to the filing cabinet. "My mistake was being too thorough. A good intelligence officer always keeps records. But you made the mistake of thinking I wouldn't notice Thor's alert during the tour. The moment your dog sat, I knew exactly what you were." "And what's that, sir?" A weapon NCIS pointed at me. Crane's expression was cold. "Did Agent Ortiz send you? Did she promise you this would all be legal, that you were just gathering probable cause?" Marcus said nothing. "Here's what's going to happen," Crane continued. "You're going to leave my property. You'll tell NCIS you found nothing. And in exchange, I won't have my attorneys destroy what's left of your career. I'll even make a generous donation to K-9 veterans organizations in Thor's name." "And if I refuse?" Crane's smile was terrible. "Then you're a trespasser who broke into a private facility on a veteran's property. The evidence you think you collected? Inadmissible. Fruit of the poisonous tree. My lawyers will bury you, and NCIS's entire investigation will collapse because you contaminated it." He was right. Legally, Crane held all the cards. But Marcus hadn't survived 22 years as a SEAL by playing by rules written by men in expensive suits. "Thor," he said quietly, "remember, the dog's eyes never left Crane. He was memorizing the scent, the face, the threat profile. Whatever happened next, Thor would never forget this man." "We're leaving," Marcus said. "But Admiral, you're wrong about one thing." "What's that?" "You think you're untouchable, but every fortress has a weakness, and I just found yours." he walked out with Thor, leaving Crane standing in his bunker of stolen wealth, surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. If this story of loyalty, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a warrior and his canine partner touched your heart, we invite you to share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes walk among us sometimes on 2 legs, sometimes on 4. We would love to hear your own stories in the comments. Have you ever been saved by trusting your instincts or by a loyal companion who saw danger before you did? For more stories that honor the guardians who protect us, the heroes who serve without recognition, and the animals whose courage matches any soldier's, please subscribe to our channel. And if you believe that true loyalty knows no bounds, that honor still exists in this world, and that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who never seek recognition, please share this story and comment "Honor and Loyalty" below. May God bless you. May He protect those who protect us, and may He always remind us that we are never truly alone in our darkest moments.